The tremor started in my hand the day I heard the recording. It wasn't a violent shake, but a low, electric hum, a vibration that seemed to emanate from the very marrow of my bones. I've been a child advocate for 15 years, and in that time, I've held the hands of children who have seen the unspeakable and listened to stories that could strip the paint from a wall. I thought I had built a fortress around my heart, a necessary shield to do this work. I thought I'd seen the absolute worst of a broken system. Then I was assigned Lily's case, and I learned that the fortress had a backdoor, and the worst I had seen was merely the shallow end of an ocean of darkness. There is no floor. There is only a descent into a cold, calculated cruelty you can't imagine until it's whispering in your ear from a digital file. Before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, and leave your like. Helps a lot. My name is Sarah, and this story isn't just about a cruel social worker. It's about the terrifying discovery that for some people, nestled deep within the system designed to build families, the true mission is to break them. Not as a failure but as a victory. It's about uncovering a quiet, insidious war being waged against children like Lily, and the day that war came for me. Section 1. The Complaint. It all began with an email, its subject line sterile and bureaucratic. Formal complaint escalation. Case file 7B4L. These emails were the bread and butter of my life at the Children's Advocacy Network, a non-profit watchdog that exists to be the system's conscience. But this one felt different. The complaint involved a high-performing, almost legendary social worker and a sensitive post-adoption placement. The attached report was dry, clinical. Adoptive parents, Mark and Jessica Miller, alleged unprofessional and psychologically damaging conduct during a home visit. The social worker's name was Eleanor Albright. The child's name was Lily. She was 7 years old. In my world, you develop a sixth sense for language. Unprofessional conduct is a vast gray landscape, stretching from tardiness to gross negligence. But psychologically damaging is a flare in the dark. It's specific. It's deliberate. My organization's first principle is simple. Believe the child, listen to the parents, and assume nothing. I pushed aside a stack of other urgent cases and called Mark and Jessica that same afternoon. Mark answered on the second ring. His voice a tightly coiled wire of fury. Ms. Collins, thank you for calling back. I apologize if I sound agitated. We've been through the ringer for 3 years to bring our daughter home. We've had our lives put under a microscope. Home studies, background checks, financial audits, parenting classes. We did everything they asked. We were prepared for challenges. We expected tantrums and therapy and tough questions. We were not ready for a monster to walk into our home wearing a government badge. He took a shaky breath and explained. Eleanor Albright had been assigned to them for the standard 6-month post-adoption support period. Lily, their daughter, was a radiant, curious little girl who had entered the foster system at age 3 after suffering severe neglect. She was black. Mark and Jessica are white. They weren't naive about the complexities of transracial adoption. They had spent years educating themselves, building a diverse community of friends and mentors, and working tirelessly with counselors to ensure Lily felt affirmed, celebrated, and deeply connected to her black heritage. The first 3 visits from Ms. Albright had been unremarkable. Routine. She'd ask clinical questions, jot down notes on her clipboard, offer thin, professional smiles and leave. But on the 4th visit, a little over a week ago, something had shifted. Lily had just gotten her hair braided for the first time at a salon her parents had found, a place celebrated in the local black community. The style was beautiful, intricate, with colorful beads woven in. Lily was incandescent with pride, spinning in circles in the living room to show it off to Eleanor. Her smile so wide it looked like it could swallow the sun. According to Mark, Eleanor watched her twirl, her own smile as thin and cold as a razor's edge. Then she knelt down, bringing herself face to face with this little girl who was finally, after years of instability, beginning to feel the deep roots of safety and belonging. Eleanor reached out but didn't touch the braids. She just gestured towards them. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice a sickeningly sweet coo. "That's quite a choice, isn't it? It must be so hard when your mommy doesn't know how to do your hair properly. All those tight braids. Does it hurt? Don't you wish you had a real mommy who knew what to do with beautiful hair like yours? The air evacuated my own lungs. I sat frozen in my office chair, the phone pressed hard against my ear, the silence stretching into an eternity. It wasn't just an insult. It was psychological warfare. It was a precision-engineered scalpel, designed to slip between the ribs of a fragile, newly formed bond and sever it. It was a virulent seed of doubt, planted in the most fertile soil imaginable. A child's deepest fear that she doesn't truly belong. Jessica got on the extension then. Her voice a raw, trembling whisper. Lily ran to her room and locked the door, Sarah. She wouldn't come out for 2 hours. When she finally did, she'd taken a pair of scissors from her art kit and tried to cut the braids out herself. She was sobbing, asking me why I wasn't her real mommy. 7-year-old child. Who does that? What was the point? That was the question that haunted me long after the call ended. What was the point? Random cruelty is a firework. Loud, ugly, and over quickly. It's often a symptom of burnout, ignorance, or a profound lack of resources. But this felt different. This felt like a tactic practiced and refined. My first official step was to pull Eleanor Albright's case notes on the visit. I have the authority to access agency files tied to our formal complaints, and I braced myself for a self-serving justification, a twisted explanation, anything. I found the opposite. The report was a masterpiece of fiction. Glowed. Page after page praised a thriving, well-adjusted child in a loving home. It highlighted Lily's strong, positive sense of racial identity, and lauded Mark and Jessica as highly engaged, exceptionally supportive parents. The woman who had psychologically dissected a 7-year-old had documented the visit as a picture-perfect success. This was the first moment that tremor started in my hand. The lie was too clean, too absolute. This wasn't the frantic, messy cover-up of someone who'd lost their temper and regretted it. It was the calm, confident work of an arsonist who had set a fire and then filed a flawless fire safety report. Eleanor Albright wasn't just a cruel social worker. She was a meticulous liar. And I had to find out why. Section 2. A pattern of ashes. Uncovering one lie is simple. Proving a pattern is a descent into madness. Eleanor Albright had a sterling reputation, a legend within the bureaucracy. Her case closure rates were the stuff of whispers in the agency hallways. Her performance reviews were, I was told, flawless. To the system, she was a star player. But I possessed something her supervisors and their statistics never would. The raw, weeping testimony of a family she had tried to shatter. My legal authority had limits. I couldn't just demand her entire personnel file. But I could do something else. My organization maintains a secure, encrypted database of every complaint we've received for the past 20 years. I could also access public court records for adoption disruptions, cases where a finalized adoption legally dissolves. It's the most tragic outcome in family law, a death certificate for a family that once was. I spent the next 3 days and nights buried in digital archives, my world shrinking to the blue glow of my monitors, fueled by coffee and a growing sense of dread. My search parameter was simple. I looked for one name, Eleanor Albright. First, a shocking, impossible nothing. Not a single formal complaint against her had ever been escalated to our level. For a social worker with a 20-year career, that isn't just a clean record. It's a statistical anomaly. It suggested one of two things. Either she was a literal saint, or any complaints about her were being systematically identified and buried long before they could reach an outside watchdog like me. So I shifted my strategy. Instead of searching for complaints filed against her, I searched for any case she was simply involved in, specifically as the assigned post-adoption support worker. A new, horrifying picture began to emerge. A dark, unsettling mosaic pieced together from dozens of fragmented files. First, Eleanor was disproportionately assigned to transracial adoption cases. In itself, that wasn't a red flag. Senior workers are often given the most complex and sensitive assignments. But then I cross-referenced that case list with the court's database of adoption disruptions. My blood ran cold. Over the last decade, our metropolitan region had suffered 19 post-adoption disruptions. A heartbreaking number, each one a universe of pain. Of those 19 failed adoptions, Eleanor Albright had been the assigned post-adoption social worker on 14 of them. 14. It was a statistical impossibility, so far outside the bounds of random chance that it felt like a signature. 14 families who had navigated the labyrinth of adoption, only to have it all crumble into ash months after bringing their child home. 14 children re-traumatized and thrown back into the chaos of the system. And Eleanor was the single, constant thread weaving through every single tragedy. The official reasons documented in the court files were vague: bureaucratic shrouds, parental incapacity, child's unresolved attachment trauma, failure to bond. But now, with Jessica's trembling voice echoing in my memory, I could imagine how those failures might have been engineered. A seed of doubt planted here. A barbed, helpful comment there. A child's anxieties expertly manipulated into a wedge. I felt like I was standing in the ghostly ashes of 14 families, trying to determine if the fires were tragic accidents or if I had stumbled upon the work of a serial arsonist. I had a mountain of damning data, but no human story to confirm my terrifying hypothesis besides Lily's. How many of those other families had blamed themselves, had carried that guilt for years, never once suspecting that the person sent to help them was actually there to ensure they failed? I was staring at the whiteboard in my office, now covered in case numbers and frantic, connecting lines, when my personal cell phone buzzed. Unlisted number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Is this Sarah Collins? The voice was young, male, and trembling with fear. Yes. Who is this? You. You can't tell anyone I called. I swear you can't. He was whispering, the muffled sounds of a busy office faint in the background. I work at the agency. I'm a junior caseworker. I overheard things. About the Albright case. The complaint from the Miller family. I sat bolt upright, my own heart starting to hammer. What did you overhear? It's not just her, he whispered, his voice cracking with panic. You're looking at the leaves, but you need to see the roots of the tree. It's the whole orchard that's poisoned. What roots? I pressed, forcing my own voice to remain calm and steady. Tell me what you know. There was a long pause, filled only by a shaky, indrawn breath. I can't. Not on the phone. But Eleanor, she gets praised for this. Not officially. Never in writing. But the senior staff, the directors. They know. They have a nickname for her. They call her the closer. They think she's fixing mistakes the system made. Fixing mistakes. The phrase hit me like a physical blow, chilling me to the bone. To them, a child like Lily in a loving home with white parents wasn't a family. It was a mistake that needed to be fixed. How do they praise her if it's not in writing? I asked, my mind racing. Unofficial performance memos. Shadow files. They talk about her. Her efficiency in resolving incongruous placements. Incongruous placements. The disgusting, clinical euphemism hung in the air. It was the language of ideology, not of child welfare. Before I could ask another question, the line went dead. I stared at my phone, the dial tone a shrill scream in the silent office. A whistleblower. Terrified and anonymous. But he had just handed me the key to a door I never knew existed. This wasn't one rogue, cruel social worker. This was an unwritten policy of cruelty. This was an ideology. If you're still here with me, don't forget to subscribe, activate notifications, leave your like, and share this video with someone. Section 3. The Sovereign Family. The whistleblower's call was a lit match in a dark room. This wasn't about one woman's personal cruelty anymore. It was about proving a conspiracy, a hidden, toxic belief system operating like a cancer inside the very agency meant to protect children. Incongruous placements. The term was a stain on my mind, the kind of polished, bureaucratic vocabulary that gives cover to monstrous ideas. My anonymous source had given me a monumental lead, but also a monumental problem. There was no legal avenue for me to access unofficial memos on a shadow server. Any attempt would be illegal, would get me fired, and would torpedo the entire case, letting the perpetrators scurry back into the darkness. I had to find another way in, a door they had left unlocked themselves. I went back to the ashes, the 14 families. The trail was cold and painful on many of them. Some had moved out of state, desperate to escape the memories. Some couples had divorced under the strain. The devastation was absolute. But after weeks of patient, gentle phone calls, I found 3 families willing to speak with me. Their stories, told years apart, were hauntingly, sickeningly similar. Each was a transracial adoptive family. Each had experienced a sudden, inexplicable, and catastrophic breakdown with their child months after the adoption was finalized. And each had been counseled, mentored, and guided by Eleanor Albright. One father, a man named David, told me his story over a video call. His face a hollow mask of old grief. "She was so damn convincing," he said, his voice raspy. "She'd pull me aside after a visit, man to man, and say things like, 'You're a good man, a great provider. But you can't possibly understand the ancestral trauma he carries. His very soul is crying out for his own people. Don't you see how your love, as well-intentioned as it is just another form of colonialism?' She made me feel like loving my son was an act of violence." Another mother, Linda, wept openly as she recounted Eleanor's words. "She told my daughter, who was 9, that she was acting out in school because her spirit was rejecting a culture that wasn't hers. She made our home sound like a prison, a place where her true identity was being suppressed." My daughter started repeating her words. After a while, she started to believe it. How do you fight that? It was the same script, the same psychological poison, tailored to each family's unique insecurities but always delivered with a sympathetic, knowing smile. She was systematically dismantling their confidence, their parental authority, and their emotional bond with their child, all under the guise of culturally sensitive, progressive advice. But it was the third interview that blew the conspiracy wide open. A woman named Maria, whose adoption of a 6-year-old boy had disrupted 4 years ago. The event had shattered her. She'd had a complete breakdown, quit her job, and moved across the country to live with her sister. "Eleanor didn't just talk to us," Maria said, her hands shaking so much she had to set her coffee cup down. "She gave us reading materials. Articles, pamphlets, little booklets. She said they were from a progressive thinkers group she was a part of. She said they would help us understand the dynamic we were in." My heart began to hammer against my ribs. "Maria, do you still have them?" She nodded, a single tear tracing a path through the makeup on her cheek. "I kept everything. Packed it all in a box. For years, I thought if I read it enough, I could understand why I failed my son." She led me down to her basement. In a dusty corner, she pulled the lid off a plastic storage tub. Inside, nestled beneath old photo albums and her son's first drawings, was a thick manila folder. The materials were professionally printed, filled with dense, academic-sounding essays on topics like cultural congruity in child placement, the fallacy of post-racial nurturing, and protecting biological heritage. The language was slippery, academic, and full of jargon, but the underlying message was brutally clear. Children belong with people who look like them. Any other arrangement is an act of harm. And then I saw it. At the bottom of a pamphlet, in tiny, almost unreadable print, published by the Sovereign Family Initiative. It wasn't a recognized academic group or a registered non-profit. It was a ghost. An internet search turned up nothing. But it was a name. These were the roots the whistleblower had told me to find. This wasn't just an idea. It was an organized movement. They had a name. They had literature. They had a mission. That night, my anonymous source called again. His voice even more urgent than before. "You found the name, didn't you?" he whispered. "The Sovereign Family Initiative." "I did," I said, my voice low and grim. "What is it?" "It's what they call themselves. A small group, maybe a dozen people, embedded in social service agencies across the state. directors, senior caseworkers, even a few legal advisors. They believe the entire child welfare system made a catastrophic mistake in the 90s by pushing for transracial adoptions. They see themselves as a course correction. They identify what they call incongruous placements. And they reclaim the child. Reclaim. The arrogance of the word was breathtaking. How? I asked. There's a document, he whispered, and I could hear his breath catching. They call it the continuum. It's their playbook, their training guide. It details the entire process, from initial contact with a target family to engineered disruption. That comment Eleanor made to Lily, the one about her hair, that's step 1. Introducing foundational insecurity. It's all in there, Sarah. Every cruel word, every tactic. It's a blueprint for breaking a family. I felt a wave of nausea so profound I had to sit down. This was a level of organized, cold-blooded malice I had never encountered. This wasn't about a child's welfare. This was a quiet, bureaucratic crusade waged by zealots. Where is this document? I demanded. It's on the same shadow server as the memos. Encrypted. But I made a copy of the encryption key. I can give it to you. You can have it all. My mind was reeling. He was offering me the smoking gun, their twisted manifesto. But if I took it, the evidence would be inadmissible in any court, fruit of the poisonous tree. It could destroy the entire case and expose him. And yet, the thought of that blueprint for cruelty existing in the dark. Don't send it, I said, my voice firm, surprising even myself. Don't do anything that could be traced back to you. You've done more than enough. You've given me the map. I'll find the treasure myself. The right way. He was silent for a long moment. They will destroy you, Sarah. Let them try, I said. Though my hand had started to tremble again, I had no choice. A formal complaint would be crushed. Going to the media without ironclad proof would get me branded as a hysterical conspiracy theorist. Getting a warrant for a secret server based on an anonymous tip was a fool's errand. They would scrub it clean the second they caught wind of an official inquiry. I had the name of the organization, their playbook, the testimony from 4 families, and a terrified whistleblower. I had everything except the bomb itself. The continuum. I had to force their hand. I had to make the monster show its face in the light. I did something unbelievably risky. I scheduled a meeting with the regional director of the entire child services agency, Eleanor's ultimate boss. His name was Thomas Albright. He was her older brother. This wasn't a secret, just a fact buried in personnel files that, on its own, meant nothing. But in the context of a conspiracy, it felt like the linchpin. I walked into his expansive top-floor office carrying a single, thin file. Inside was nothing but the cover page of the Sovereign Family Initiative pamphlet Maria had given me. Thomas, a tall, impeccably dressed man in his late 50s with silver hair and a politician's practiced smile, greeted me warmly. Sarah, always a pleasure. Though your meeting request sounded rather dramatic. I didn't take the offered seat. I walked directly to his vast mahogany desk and placed the single sheet of paper in front of him. I watched his eyes. For a fraction of a second, the smile faltered. A flicker of something cold and sharp, like a shard of ice, passed over his face before being instantly replaced by a mask of bland curiosity. The Sovereign Family Initiative, he read aloud, feigning mild confusion. Catchy name. One of these new grassroots advocacy groups, I presume. You could call it that, I said, my voice dangerously calm. They seem to be very influential within your agency. Especially with caseworkers like your sister, Eleanor. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. My sister, he said, his voice flat and hard, is one of the most dedicated and effective public servants I have ever known. If you are here to slander her impeccable record based on the complaints of one disgruntled family. 14, I interrupted, letting the word hang in the air. 14 disruptions in 10 years under her direct supervision. All transracial placements. And I have spoken with 3 of the prior families. They all describe the exact same pattern of psychological manipulation. A pattern that seems drawn directly from the philosophy in that pamphlet. He leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers, looking at me with an expression of weary disappointment. Sarah, you're an intelligent woman. You've done good work. But you are seeing shadows where there are none. You see a pattern. I see a senior social worker brave enough to take on the system's most challenging cases. You see malice. I see a professional guiding families toward a realistic, if painful, conclusion when a placement is clearly not in a child's best long-term interest. He was good. So good. He was gaslighting me, twisting the system's real complexities into a shield for its most profound corruption. He was making me sound like the hysterical one. And what about the continuum? I asked, playing my final desperate card. The training manual. The one with the step-by-step guide to engineering disruption. This time I hit a nerve. His eyes narrowed. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered. And in its place was the terrifying, burning glare of a true believer. The zealot. You have no idea what you are meddling with, he hissed, his voice a low, venomous growl. We are fixing what this agency broke decades ago. We are restoring children to their heritage. We are correcting a generation of misguided social engineering that sold a lie. The families you weep for were a mistake. We are the solution. He had confessed. Not in a way I could ever record or prove in court, but he'd shown me his soul. Arrogance. The absolute certainty. The chilling, unshakable belief that he was righteous. And that's when I truly began to tremble. It started in my core, a deep seismic shudder that worked its way through my limbs until my teeth chattered. It wasn't fear of him, not anymore. It was a terror born of a sudden, horrifying revelation. Finally understood. Mocking Lily wasn't just a tactic. For them it was a sacrament, an act of faith in their twisted ideology. They saw themselves as saviors, not destroyers. How do you fight that? How do you reason with people who have weaponized their own righteousness? I stood there in the heart of the beast, realizing this was bigger than Eleanor, bigger than her powerful brother. This was a cancer that had metastasized deep within the system. I had stumbled into a war of faith, and I had just seen the face of my enemy. And I knew they would stop at nothing to destroy me. The tremor didn't stop for an hour. I sat in my car in the parking garage, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't fit the key in the ignition. Thomas Albright's words echoed in my head, not as a threat but as a creed. We are the solution. The messianic conviction in his voice was more terrifying than any weapon. I knew my old playbook was useless. A formal complaint would be shredded. An anonymous media leak would be dismissed. Thomas would use the full weight of the state to crush me and my small non-profit, painting me as a rogue advocate with a vendetta. So I did the one thing they wouldn't expect. I didn't go public. I went to the one power that could match them, the State Attorney General's office. Through a trusted former colleague, I secured a quiet, off-the-books meeting with the head of the Civil Rights Division, a formidable and notoriously relentless lawyer named David Chen. In a noisy coffee shop miles from our respective offices, I laid out everything. The 14 disruptions, the family's testimony, the Sovereign Family Initiative pamphlet, the anonymous whistleblower, the confrontation with Thomas Albright and his chilling confession. I handed him a meticulously organized dossier, its final page containing my own sworn affidavit quoting Thomas's words verbatim. David Chen read everything in complete silence, his expression unreadable. When he was done, he closed the folder and looked me straight in the eye for a long time. If even half of this is true, Ms. Collins, he said, his voice quiet but laced with steel, this is the biggest child welfare scandal in this state's history. It's all true, I replied, my voice hoarse. My office will launch a preliminary inquiry based on your affidavit, he stated. It will be quiet. Subpoenas under seal. We get one shot at this and we can't miss. Then he gave me a grave warning. Go back to your office and act like this meeting never happened. They will be watching you. They will come for you. They will try to find a reason to fire you, to discredit you, to bury you in litigation. Your only job now is to be utterly and completely unimpeachable. Give them nothing. The next 5 months were the longest of my life, lived in a constant state of low-grade paranoia. Just as David predicted, the agency launched a surprise programmatic audit of my non-profit, a transparent and burdensome attempt to intimidate me. Eleanor Albright was quietly reassigned to a desk job, a meaningless slap on the wrist designed to make the problem look handled. They were trying to exhaust me. But beneath the surface, David's team was moving like ghosts. Subpoenaing phone records, interviewing the families I found, slowly and painstakingly building a case brick by brick. The whistleblower never contacted me again. I just prayed every night that he had covered his tracks, that he was safe. He was the unsung hero who had lit a single match in an endless dark. The break came on a Tuesday morning in April. The AG's office, now armed with enough corroborating evidence from the families for a high-level warrant, had conducted a targeted digital forensics operation over the weekend. They had found it, a shadow server, the unofficial performance memos praising Eleanor as the closer. And deep within a heavily encrypted partition, they found the playbook, the Continuum Initiative, a guide to restorative reclamation. It was everything the whistleblower had said, and worse. It was a cold, step-by-step manual for psychological warfare against families and children. I read a printed copy in David Chen's office, my hands shaking, not with fear this time, but with a righteous, cleansing fury. Step 1. Introducing foundational insecurity. Step 2. Alienating the parental bond. Step 3. Cultivating identity rejection. Step 4. Engineering disruption. It was a blueprint for evil. The day the indictments came down was gray and cold. The Attorney General held a press conference, announcing a massive civil rights lawsuit against the State Department of Child Services for fostering a conspiracy of discrimination. Criminal indictments were issued for 12 individuals on charges ranging from conspiracy to deprive civil rights to wire fraud. Thomas Albright was at the top of the list. His sister, Eleanor, was right beneath him. The news sent a shockwave through the child welfare community, a long-overdue earthquake that brought the whole rotten structure crashing down. The scandal was out. The rot was exposed to the cleansing fire of sunlight. The legal battles will take years, but the Sovereign Family Initiative is dead. Its members are disgraced, their vile ideology dragged from the shadows and into the public square to be seen for what it is. A few weeks ago, I drove out to see Mark, Jessica, and Lily. The heavy blanket of anxiety that had once suffocated their home was gone, replaced by something light and warm. Lily, now almost 8, ran up and gave me a bone-crushing hug. Her hair was in a magnificent crown of fresh braids, adorned with glittering gold beads. She looked at me with the clear, bright, mischievous eyes of a child who knows, without a shadow of a doubt, that she is loved, that she is safe, that she is home. Jessica and I sat on the porch swing, watching Lily chase butterflies in the yard. "She's in therapy," Jessica said softly. "We all are." The therapist said what Eleanor tried to do was inflict a foundational wound, to poison her sense of self at the root. She said the only cure is a relentless, overwhelming flood of unconditional love. I looked at Lily, laughing as her father swept her up into the air. A flood of unconditional love. It's the one thing in this world that can't be bureaucratized, quantified, or broken by a twisted ideology. The system is vast and its shadows are long and dark. But I've learned there is no darkness so complete that a single, determined light can't pierce it. The tremor in my hand is gone now. It's been replaced by a resolve as hard and as permanent as steel. My name is Sarah and I am a child advocate. And my work is not done. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, leave your like, and share this video with others.